All right. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. We have an awesome panel scheduled for today. This Med Mentor Monday is going to be called Finding Your Pre-Med Path. And so we're going to be exploring some of the steps and like when did people decide to become pre-med? When did people like start getting involved with pre-med things and all that kind of stuff? But before we dive into that, I think it'd be awesome if we can just have some really brief panel introductions. So my name is Ryan. I'm a PhD 1 in the MD PhD program here. I will be serving as the moderator today. Fun fact about me, I have a twin brother who goes here. So if you see someone who looks kind of like me and you yell out, Kevin, you might get a really cool response back. I will popcorn it to Jerome.
All right, hi everybody. My name is Jerome, MS1 here at DGSOM. I went to undergrad at Berkeley, and I don't think I really have a fun fact. I guess I do comedy sometimes, so that's my fun fact.
I can go next. I got it. My name is Jay. I am also an MS1 here at DGSOM. It's nice to meet you all. I went to Brown University for undergrad. And fun fact about me is that I have very recently gotten into climbing. So there are some climbing gyms here at UCLA that are great, especially for beginners. And so, yeah, I will popcorn it to Fadi.
Hi everyone, my name is Fadi, MS1 here also. I went here for undergrad actually, so I'm a double Bruin right now. A fun fact about me, I think I'm way into deadlifting, I guess. So yeah, and I'll popcorn it to Rebecca.
Hi, my name is Rebecca. I graduated from the University of Arizona. I'm from Tucson, Arizona. I'm an MS1 here at DGSOM. Fun fact about me, I was not prepared for a fun fact. I guess one of my hobbies is that I like to do pole fitness.
Awesome. Thank you all for the really cool introductions. I also forgot to mention, I also went to Berkeley for undergrad, so go Bears, but have now transitioned to the Bruin life. Cool. So without further ado, I think we'll just enter our first segment. So we'll have a couple of different segments on different topics, and then the last 15 minutes will be for open Q&A. So if you have questions during any of the segments, feel free to put them in the Q&A icon down below, or you can save them to ask at the end, whatever sort of floats your boat. So our first segment is going to be just starting on the pre-med path. And so I think everyone kind of has entered the medical sphere in different ways at different times. So for panelists, it would be great if maybe you could spend a minute or two just discussing and reflecting, when did you sort of decide and know in your heart that medical school is where you wanted to go and that was a career that you wanted to have?
I can take a jab at this one. So for me, I think as long as I can remember, always wanted to go into medicine, I guess, for two reasons. The first of which was I was really good in science-related subjects. I like biology a lot. But I guess the more interesting reason was my grandmother, who was diagnosed with leukemia when I was around like 8 or 9. And just seeing her like not being able to help herself and stuff like that just wanted me to like one day become a doctor so I can like cure her. Unfortunately, she passed away when I was a little, but I kept wanting to become a doctor so no one's grandma can suffer such pain, right? So that's all the thoughts I had growing up as a kid. Yeah, that's what brought me all the way here. I'll popcorn it to Jay. I think Jay unmuted when I unmuted. Sorry to cut you off, bro.
You are fine. No, thank you. Yeah, I think it's a similar story for me. I sort of always knew. I also had a family member. My mother struggles with a chronic condition, and so it's kind of always been in my life. And I also had an affinity for the sciences, although that's definitely not necessary at all. I also really liked English and history. I went straight through to medical school, so I graduated in 4 years, and then so I actually graduated from Brown last year, and I came straight here. And I think that's a nice way to do it if you're absolutely certain. I think one thing I'll say is that a lot of people in my class did not do that. And I'm kind of realizing more and more, and I'm becoming an even bigger proponent of like taking gap years and not rushing the process. Even if you're like super sure, because there's all these great experiences you can do after you graduate. Like some people did Fulbrights, they went to different countries or did incredible research things. And so obviously, if you guys want to ask me any questions about going straight through, that's great. And I'm glad I did that. That was the right choice for me. But also, like, don't be scared if that's not what kind of happens to you. I will popcorn it to Rebecca.
Okay, I am the exact opposite. I am not scientifically inclined. In high school, I did not like science. I didn't like math. Didn't even plan to going to college. I actually went into the military after high school. I ended up getting injured in the military, and I was honorably discharged. And so I went back to college. I was actually an English major, and I kind of slowly made my way towards neuroscience. I knew I wanted to do something in healthcare as an undergrad. I just didn't really know how to do it. As the background suggests, I am first gen anything and everything. And so I just, like everyone else, seemed to know what they were doing pre-med wise, and I did not. So after I graduated college, I actually took some more time off to work in healthcare. So I took 6 gap years. I am a non-traditional student, obviously. I just turned 30 a few weeks ago. So how did I know? I was actually working in as a clinical research coordinator, and I saw the physicians, they were able to like work in research and still care for patients, and they were making these like community-wide changes. And that's like, okay, this is what I want to do. And that's how I knew that I wanted to be a doctor. So just to go, the opposite way of our first 2 responders is that if you want to take gap years and, it's totally fine. And it's okay if you don't know that you wanted to be a doctor. I didn't even know being a doctor was like a thing I could do. I grew up pretty poor. I think I'm the only MD to come out of my high school. So it's okay to like take those gap years and really just like be absolutely sure, because it's a long road. And with that, I will popcorn it off. Did we lose someone? No, sorry. Jerome.
All right. So for me, I think I really knew I wanted to go into medicine senior year of high school, actually. So I think it's very fitting that I'm here at DGSOM now. The event that really made me fall in love with medicine and know that it was my calling was I had to get my arm repaired here. I underwent operation here in my senior year of high school. Always wanted to be a baseball player. I didn't really aspire to be anything else. Like I was just gonna do baseball related things until I died. Essentially, it was my plan. I was always like a pretty smart kid, but I didn't see that as a way to make a living for myself. But getting injured, I think when I was like 14, 15 years old, and just having a tough recovery back, I wasn't able to play anymore after getting some pretty serious scholarship looks from some colleges and losing all of those. I mean, it was a painful road. And it was when I came here, got my operation done at UCLA, where I met the first doctor I felt cared about me and asked me questions and didn't treat me like a kid. I actually just the last week, I actually got a chance to meet up with that orthopedic surgeon again. We got to talk a little bit. I got to express my gratitude, and he was giving me guidance on how to become an orthopedic surgeon myself. I think that's where I want to be headed. But we'll see. I'll keep my options open, but really coming full circle here now as an MS1.
Awesome. Thank you all for those really, really inspiring stories. I think as you can all see, like everyone enters this career in a different way at a different time. And I don't think there is any like single right way to do it. And I think especially as Rebecca has stressed, like it's really important to know that it is indeed what you want to do ahead of time, or like not ahead of time necessarily, but like before you commit to applying and going through that entire process. Because I know people in my cohort, in my class, who I've like heard, they're like, oh, now that I'm here, sometimes I'm not sure if that was like my end goal, like always. So definitely it's a long road. So make sure that you are really in tune with it before jumping in. I think that's an awesome springboard into our next segment and set of questions. I think, like, once you decide, like, okay, pre-med is the path for me, I'm going to make this happen. Everyone kind of approaches it a little differently. So a question for the panelists would be, what was the first thing that you did? And then what were some of the steps following that you did? So some people like join labs automatically. Some people jump into shadowing. Some people join extracurricular groups. What was the first thing that you did? And then any other things that came afterwards?
I'll start. So I actually feel like I did things backwards. So I was pretty involved in undergrad, even though I wasn't like completely sure I wanted to be pre-med. Well, I wanted to be pre-med, but I just didn't have the confidence. Like I didn't know what, like I said, I didn't know what I was doing. So I joined some labs, like research labs as an undergrad. I was in a psych lab. I also did things like I was in the neuroscience club. We would go teach kids at actually the school district that I grew up in, which is not a good school district. So that was a great way to give back. But when I was like taking time off to like look to explore healthcare, I did a lot of clinical research. And so I was a medical assistant at a neurosurgery neurology lab. I'm sorry, clinic, not lab. And then I actually am a registered sleep technologist. People don't know what that is. It's okay. Sleep technologists are people who run sleep studies. And that was like great clinical experience. I'm more than happy to talk about that. But that's what I've been a sleep tech for like 5 or 6 years now. So that was like a big chunk of my clinical experience. And then I worked in a clinical sleep lab, and then I transferred to the research lab to work at clinical sleep. And that's when I discovered that I wanted to be a doctor. So I kind of did things backwards. I do want to say, sorry, one more thing that I did that was really, I think that really stood out was I was a behavioral health technician as well in college. I don't know how it works in California, but in Arizona, we have something called respite homes. So our Medi-Cal is called Access, and so kids who are insured through Access. So that this includes like foster care kids, also children who are living on the Pasco Yaqui reservation. They would come, so they had behavioral health diagnoses, and so they would come for the weekend, and we would like facilitate life skills. So that was a really cool opportunity. I won't belabor my point anymore. I did a lot of different things, but I just wanted to say I actually did things backwards. And so once I decided I wanted to be, a physician, actually from there I started studying for the MCAT. And then I will popcorn it over to Jay.
Sure. I think that doing things to learn about medicine often get conflated with like doing things to get into medical school. And so I want to emphasize that a lot of the first things I did, I never did to like get into medical school or make it look good in my resume. When I got to college, I had things I knew I wanted to do before getting into college that I did first. And they ended up helping me in my medical school application in ways that I didn't even think. But I've always wanted to dance in college. So I joined Brown's South Asian dance team. I joined a cappella groups. I joined a lot of teaching groups. So like teaching, kind of like what Rebecca said, going back to school districts around Providence and teaching community. And so from there, I sort of started learning about just like myself. I just wanted to learn about what I liked and how to make new friends and interact with new people. And I think if you start getting stressed about finding a lab and stuff really early on, it can take a toll. And not all of us have that. Some people do have that focus to like find a lab the second they walk onto campus. I did not, and that's okay. Really, I only started doing research after or in the middle of my second year of college, which is still early. It's still pretty early compared to some people. So I wanted to emphasize with my answer that like do things that interest you. And on my interview trail, so many people ask me about like singing, about dancing, because people like medical schools aren't just looking for people who have 10 publications and who can make a poster. Like they're looking for kind of people who bring something unique and new to the class, and those things help you in your patient interactions just as much as, writing a paper would. So that's something I wanted to emphasize. I did shadow a lot. I did research. I did research that I didn't like for a long time. And so that wasn't fun, but I stuck with the lab because like commitment.
Oh, I don't think we can hear you, Jay. Oh, might have had a connection. Oh, Jay, I think we have a connection. Oh, you're back. Sorry.
Okay.
You
Okay.
cut out for like 20 seconds.
Oh no, oh my gosh. Okay, so all I want to say is that, I did research that I didn't like, and then I found research that I did like. So don't be afraid to like leave a lab because it's not fun to like just like plow through a project that you're not really that interested in. So yeah, those are my words of wisdom. I will pass it off to Jerome.
All right, thank you, Jay. For me, I didn't touch any pre-med activities until like the second semester of my junior year, and that was by design. I knew I was going to take gap years after college. I'm the first person in my family to go to college, so my parents' advice to me was do things in college that you can only do in college. So I focused on that, and they told me, oh, like you can get clinical experience like after you, it's okay to take a gap year, work and support myself. And that's what I did. So the first thing that I did was find a community. I think that's is very, very important. My first semester, I had a mentality of, oh, let me just adjust. I'm going to focus only on school. And that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to take the minimum amount of units. And then I did very, very bad that first semester. And then second semester came along, I didn't want to be there. I thought about like transferring out of Berkeley. But I ended up joining a couple clubs and my fraternity that I was involved with for all 4 years. And I think that was a huge portion of my application that helped me stand out, the leadership components to that, and the national recognition from the fraternity as a member. So I think once I had that solid foundation of people, then it started becoming easier because then I had upperclassmen whom I could go to for advice. They could tell me what study tips work, which professors take and when, how best to study. They give me their previous study guides that they thought helped, much like it is here. Very collaborative. So like find your people first, I think is what I would say. And to Jay's point, I did a lot of things that weren't necessarily medicine related, but everything that I did improved me in some way, whether that's me just de-stressing, like through doing a comedy, or improving some soft skills that I needed, like doing like being a resident assistant or being involved with orientation. Like I did all those things, and they made me better. And made my application more complete. And then at the end, I finally started research, I think, end of junior year, and then did that for 2 years, once into my 1 year into my gap year as well. And then I was a medical assistant for 2 years. So yeah, so if you are considering gap years, for me, it worked, and I always had like a 6-7 year timeline from beginning of undergrad to medical school, and that's what happened. That was my plan. If for some reason that's not in your plans, but it's something to consider, and it's something that is completely a viable option to follow going into medical school. Okay, who's the last one? I think it's Fatty. Is the last one? Yeah, go ahead, bud.
All right. So for me, I didn't go to UCLA straight. So my first couple of years were in community college, and community college is very different than, say, an upper university. In terms of how much access do you have to extracurricular stuff. So in college, community college, I didn't even know that, oh, we're supposed to have all these extracurriculars outside of school, right? So I didn't even get involved in anything except for like hospital shadowing. I just wanted to get a feel of the hospital system, the health system here in the US, because I'm from abroad. so yeah, and that was like the only thing I did. And then when I transferred out to UCLA, and then I was like, oh no, I need to do much more than that. So that's when I started. So I think I started late, but because of that, I kind of like packed a lot of extracurriculars, and I found my calling into teaching related extracurriculars as well as research. And then I took 2 gap years between medical school and undergrad to try to like even expand more on these skills. So as far as teaching wise, I was in programs that went back to like middle schools and elementary schools and like taught children. I was in an LA program, if you guys know the ones that went to UCLA here in the chat, where it's like a science where you have like TAs. And then after I graduated, I became a TA for Chem 153A on campus for a couple of years in my undergrad. So, and then I also was in about 3 research labs throughout my undergrad career. And yeah, those were the 2 areas that I focused on as far as extracurriculars. So I'm thinking something to research maybe in the future. Not as like full-time researcher position, but at least a good chunk of my career. Yeah, and then I liked it. It worked out very well for me, but the one thing that kept me sane on the side was again deadlifting, I guess. I was in John Wooden every night, just at the deadlift rack, or maybe like doing other like benches and stuff. But yeah, so I picked deadlifting, and I talked about it in my application. And then to your surprise, actually, I talked about it at every single interview that I got, not because I talked about it, because they asked me about it. So which this brings the importance of doing something you like. Going off of what my colleague said, it's very, very important. They want character. They don't want a machine. So they want to see that you have a life outside, that you have passions that you pursue. And yeah, so and one of my interviewers actually happened to have deadlifting on his bucket list or something to like do. And then we spent like the entire interview me telling him about like, oh, this is the diet I followed. This is the workouts that you should do to like warm up before, and this and that. And then next thing you know, I got into that school. So, so if there's something out there that you like, no matter what it is, whether it's related to medicine or not, you should pursue it, and you should definitely talk about it in your applications. It's going to set you apart somehow.
Awesome, thank you. I might have to ask you for some advice on how to bulk up and like do the right diets. But yeah, I think again, a common thread that's I think showed up in everyone's answer is, you know, standing out is not always just hitting all the stereotypical pre-med activities. Like it's usually just doing something that you really love, whether it's singing, dancing, deadlifting, cooking, whatever it is, comedy, etc. Just as a little precursor about me, so I did taiko, which is Japanese drumming, for 5 years at Berkeley, and I have joined the team here as well during my PhD. So I think that was something that really set me apart and has zero relevance to medicine. Like I talked about it in my personal statement all the time, but when you like boil it down, it's kind of hard to compare Japanese drumming to like medical practice. But I think like it speaks to having dimensionality, which is incredibly important. Like there are so many people who are going to have research experience, so many people who are going to have shadowing, so many people who are going to have like publications or posters or conferences or whatever. But you know, at the end of the day, sometimes it's hard to distinguish them all if everyone has that, right? And so when you want to create a diverse class of students who are going to support each other and create a really good community, making sure that each person has something to bring to the table that's unique in their own right, I think is sort of the secret ingredient. So I think that kind of touches on the next question I wanted to ask, but you know, what, if you could, in like one sentence, what would you say makes for a strong application? Like from a pre-med perspective, you know, like looking forward, I have decided maybe medical school is the right thing for me. I want to start building a strong application, but you know, what would be your advice for starting to go about that process?
I would say trying to create a cohesive story. I think those can really resonate with admissions committees, and you can create a cohesive story even if your story is kind of all over the place, and you've done all these things in the past, because it's your life, so it's about you. I mean, trying to kind of fit all the different pieces into like why you want to do medicine in a way that's like impactful, I think like really worked for me personally. Because I did go straight through, but I did have some things on my app that like, if I didn't write about them in a certain way, someone would have been like, oh, why did you do this? It seems like you're interested in this other thing. But if you try to build a story, like a narrative for yourself and your path to medicine, I think that's what people remember. I will pass it off to Jerome.
Thanks, Jay. I'm still kind of gathering my thoughts about this because I think there's multiple ways to go about having a stellar application, right? So some people, they have that one thing that separates them from the rest of the pack, right? A lot more don't. I think I was one of those people who didn't have that one spectacular thing, right? Like I wasn't an Olympian or like won a massive national competition or anything like that. But it doesn't have to be, right? So I think really like okay, so you have to check off some boxes, right? To get into medical school, you have to meet your certain benchmark. You have to do well in school enough. You have to show that you're doing things outside of medicine. But the key is that you have to do activities that you really, really like, and that you are passionate about, right? Some things maybe you're not as passionate about as others, but you can't hate it, because if you are asked about it in an interview, that's going to show really, really easily. So whatever it is that you're passionate about, it's like, go ahead and pursue it. Don't look at it as like, oh, it's not going to improve my GPA. It's not going to help me study for the MCAT. I can use that time otherwise. Like, no, it's meaningful for you. It adds value to your life. And it's something that down the line makes you a better applicant, because it shows who you are as a person. And once you talk about that with the passion that you bring to that activity, it's really going to show, and it's going to make you stand out. And it also will improve you in many ways, as not just a future doctor, but as a person. And just that mindset of getting better each and every day in every facet of your life, whether it's academic or otherwise, that accumulates to make you a stronger applicant, right? So let's go with Rebecca.
Yeah, just to echo off that, I think something that's underrated and that you should, keep mindful of while you're applying to medical school, while you're in medical school, like throughout your whole career, is be authentic, like be yourself. I got so much bad advice when I was applying to medical school. Things like, they don't like community college courses, and I did like a bunch of community college courses, or like don't put certain things on your application, things like that. And like, for instance, I mentioned this earlier, but I do pole fitness, and I was told multiple times, don't put it on. Medical school admissions are not going to like it. And I ignored everyone, and I put it on, and I got brought up in several interviews. And because I realized that it was something that like made me who I am. And so I think that it's really important to keep true to yourself during this process. And just a thread that we've been talking about is do things that you're passionate about, and have your passion show in your application. Another small side note is that please take time to write well. I am an English major, and so not to brag, I feel like my personal statement slapped. Like, I think it was great. And I'm also a low stat applicant, so I got a lot of interviews, and I think that was why. Sorry, my cat is like trying to climb on, so I'm gonna popcorn it to Fatty.
Right. Well, I wish I was as talented as you, Rebecca. When it got to writing, I definitely sucked there. I asked a lot of help for doing the writing, but definitely, yeah. So like Jeremy said, there's check boxes, right? You're gonna have to volunteer at some hospital. You're gonna have to like probably shadow some physicians. You want to have some exposure to medicine. They want to see that, right? But that's not what's gonna get you into medicine. So don't go out there and volunteer in 8 hospitals and shadow 10 physicians, right? So you want to do some stuff outside, like we said before, set you apart, and try to do them in things that you're interested in, like Jay said. So sit down by yourself, ask yourself a question. Where do you want to see yourself in 10 years? What kind of physician do you want to be? Do you want to be a researcher? If you want to do that, okay, think about joining a research lab. Think about like topics you would like to like do research on, reach out to faculties and whatnot. Do you want to be a teacher, professor? Get into teaching related extracurriculars and hone in on these abilities. So it's kind of like you try to do things around what you like and not just things to fill your resume with. Once you do that, your resume by itself is going to sound so coherent, and you're not going to have a hard time connecting the dots. And then also focus on things like a life story of yours, or like an event that really, I guess, had a turnover in your life, or something that's very unique about your story, right? Like, it doesn't have to be medicine related, and just capitalize on that. Or if you have a hidden talent, also capitalize on that. So there's a lot of you element that goes into the application that you need to like put on there, so you can set yourself apart, and then it acts as something interesting about you that can like draw interviewers and the readers towards your application. So there's, just to recap, some things you'll have to like do as check marks, but then again, the answer is that it's going to come from you. You need to really focus on what makes you special and where do you want to see yourself in the future, so you don't end up like doing extracurriculars that you don't like, that will make you feel like, oh, was this a waste of time, or that that you just like wanted to put it on your resume. Because people will see, right? Like if they ask you about that specific extracurricular in your interview, and they don't see you as motivated, they will like kind of like know that you probably did it just to put it on there. So try to like everything that you do.
All very sound advice. Thank you all. I think it's a really awesome opportunity to go into our next segment, because, you know, the stress of having to create and craft like a cohesive story, doing all the things you love, and doing so in a way that allows you to create a good, strong application, all of that can be incredibly stressful. And I remember when I first decided that I was going to sort of pursue this path, I was just entirely overwhelmed. And so the next question is going to focus on mental health, like knowing that there was this massive set of obstacles in front of you, a lot of things that you had to achieve, all these check boxes to mark. What were sort of the approaches that you took in order to try to actively combat things like imposter syndrome, or making sure that you were constantly motivated, or being able to sort of push yourself? What were the things that helped you and kept you going?
Well, I can speak a lot on that. So as far as like the motivation, so try to do things that take your mind completely off of the whatever that is at hand, not just your, let's say, application to medical school, whatever stressful event that you go through. So for me, again, it was like deadlifting. Whenever I was there at John Wooden, I literally didn't think about anything outside of that gym. It was just me, the bar, and the music. So that was like my therapy, I guess, from everything, from school, from worrying about the future, regardless. Find something that you really like, that you're really passionate about, that can actually do that for you, to set you and put you in a place where you can just like, you know, get away from everything. So that's one. Another thing, as far as motivation, go to YouTube and look up motivational speeches, or like motivational talks. Like, those were huge. I can probably like name a lot, a lot of like videos about that. And then it could also be books. So there are some books out there about like believing in yourself, or like channel your inner like strength, or like believe in yourself, so on and so forth. And once you read those, they have like some very motivational quotes, to be honest. And then sometimes it will make you be like, oh, like whatever I'm stressing about is not really worth it. Everything's gonna be fine at some point. And yeah, it's gonna calm me down a lot. And then I'll popcorn it to Jay.
Thanks, Fadi. I think a lot of the stress that comes with being a pre-med is that like it becomes your whole world, because there are so many things to do, and it's a bubble. And so some of the things that Fadi said, and things that I'll say, some of the things I think we'll all say, will kind of come to the theme of kind of removing yourself from that bubble and putting things into perspective. And that's something I really tried to do as a pre-med. There'd be times where I'm really stressed about kind of orgo or trying to get a research position or something. And the more you kind of interact with patients and like do things that give you perspective, you're going to realize that patients aren't going to care what medical school you go to or what you get on your orgo exam. You just have to be prepared enough to treat them and give them kindness and be humble and give them the care that they need. And so that really helped, that kind of thought process really helped me get through school. I wasn't doing these things to be a doctor. I was doing these things to like help my future patients, if that makes sense. To keep things, you know, kind of like in perspective. That's one thing that I really tried to practice. In the grand scheme of things, it's not a big deal if you don't do as well on something as you have wanted to. So that was one thing. And another thing that kind of helped me get out of the pre-med bubble and put things into perspective is having a lot of non-pre-med friends. I think that was really helpful to me because I could not deal with this. Like I would feed off of other people's stress and then it would just become like this whole, oh my God. So not that this didn't happen by choice, it just sort of happened. Although I think if I were to kind of go back, I wouldn't change a thing because being a doctor, again, is just being a doctor. It's just another part of society, just like being a lawyer, being, you know, one of my friends was an anthropologist. And not only can you learn about their fields to kind of like enrich your own life, but you can get away from the pre-med kind of stress snowball effect that can happen when a bunch of pre-meds are studying in a library for the orgo exam the next day. So my 2 words of advice are kind of put things into perspective. We are on like a floating rock in the middle of space. It's okay that like, you know, you don't finish your lab on time and you do it, you know, hand it in a day late. And also surround yourself with people who give you new perspectives and can ground you. And with that, I will pass it on to Rebecca. Cool.
Like I'm not a great person to ask because these are things I still struggle with. You know, my path was so like off the beaten path to medical school. So I did a lot of this on my own. So I really struggled with imposter syndrome, especially because I'm first gen to go to college, to do anything sciencey, stuff like that. And I was also really struggling during undergrad. I come from a really disadvantaged background. And so I had to work multiple jobs to support myself. And, you know, my grades suffered as a result. And then I didn't have any mentors in undergrad who like believed enough in me, I guess, to be in medical school. So it was really hard. And I think it's something I still struggle with, especially imposter syndrome, especially because I'm at UCLA. Like, I think that was like, I just like threw that in, that school in, and I ended up getting here. So like, it was pretty crazy. So as far as motivation, I don't know. I just had the nerve not to give up once I decided to go through medical school. You just gotta like, that momentum builds and you just go with it. The other thing is I really want to go back home and practice. And so I think that's also a motivation that I have as well, that like keeps me going through the harder days. But I agree with what everyone else said. Please have people outside of, pre-med and medical school. I really cherish those people. The longer I'm in medical school, it's really nice to have those people. And then to add to that, I would also really find mentors who believe in you. I thought it was too stupid to go to medical school. Like nobody told me it was like, those socioeconomic determinants of health and like success and all those things that was playing a role in like my life. And so like you would like the way that people help you and treat you really shapes who you are. And that's like, once I had the confidence to go to pre-med, and try to go to medical school, it changed everything. And I just wanted to point out, like, it was really hard and I really struggled with like mental health and like imposter syndrome, but it's so worth it. And then last but not least, I'll popcorn it over to Jerome.
All right, thank you. I think for me, the key to staying on top of my mental health is introspection. I'm a huge proponent of that. And I'm just a naturally analytical person. So I look at things that way. So whenever I hit a roadblock in terms of like studying or life pertaining to medicine, I always took a second to kind of sit with those feelings. Like if I ever felt like I wasn't enough, I didn't immediately go, oh, I'm not enough, or this is an invalid feeling. I sit on it and I think about it. Like, why am I feeling that way? Right. I think that's a completely valid way to go about it. That was my form of self-care, is thinking, oh, cute cat, is thinking about why I'm feeling that way. Like, am I actually like, do I need improvement? Do I need to get better at something? And that's okay. Realizing that you're not where you want to be yet, that's completely fine, right? A lot is said about competition in pre-med and in medicine in general. For me, I thrive off competition, but not with like other people. I compete with the best version of myself and who I think I should be. I let people run their own race to stay in my lane. For me, it's all about day by day getting better and really analyzing, am I where I want to be right now? Is this the person that I want to be? And if not, realize that that's okay. I always say, especially now with this new curriculum, I'm not struggling, I'm behind. So I'm like running a couple lectures behind, but that's okay. I'm not struggling with it. I'm just like, I'm running my own pace, and that's completely fine. So I think for me, once I got to that point, then it started getting a lot easier in terms of being more motivated and really going back to my values. Why do I even want to be a doctor in the first place? I think about me sitting in the patient chair and having all those bad experiences and wanting to make it better for people. So for me, it's really about knowing myself. Like, that's my motto in life is know thyself. And really starting from there and branching off, I think has really helped me.
Awesome. Well, also very inspiring. I think so. I was actually around when Med Mentors first got started, dating myself now. But we had the first and last in-person event we had was like right when COVID was raring to go. And there was it was a coffee chat where everyone just sort of came and had coffee, and like pre-meds met with med students, and we all had like a kumbaya. And one of the things that I said that I continue to say to this day is that, you as a pre-med, you are not better than anyone else, and you are not worse than anyone else. You are different and unique with your own story to craft and still yet to make. So I think that piece of advice is something that I always try to give, and to remind like everyone, like, it's so easy, as has been said, to get caught up in like, oh, here are all the things I have to do, and like, let me look to my right and I see this person doing that, let me look to my left and I see this person doing that, and feeling like you have to do the exact same thing, and let it be a competition like against other people. And that's not the objective. The objective is for you to stay true to yourself, to do the things that you love, and to do so in a way that allows you to grow as a person. So just always remember, you're not better and you're not worse than any of the other pre-meds. You're just different and you have your own unique story. So I do want to give time for open Q&A. So we're, I guess, running a few minutes after the 7:45 mark. But if any of you have any questions you'd like to ask, you can either do so through the Q&A, or I think if you give me a signal, I can like allow you to talk through the webinar if you're comfortable. It is recorded though, so bear that in mind. But if there aren't any questions, we also have other things we can go over too. So, any questions? I guess while we wait to see if there are any questions. So one thing I always like to ask is like, what was like the moment where your resolve to be in the medical field was tried the hardest? Like when you thought, okay, maybe this is like not where I'm supposed to be. Maybe I should be doing something completely different. If any.
So like I mentioned earlier, I'm a sleep technologist, and so we run sleep studies. And it's kind of like an offshoot of primary care, because a lot of people come into the primary care physician's office and they complain about their sleep, but then they get referred to us. And so I wasn't technically pre-med, I was just like pre-health. But I was really turned off by healthcare because of how drastically I treated people with different insurances. So the better your insurance, the better care you got, because there was, without going into like what a sleep study entails, there were certain, like I could provide more therapy because the insurance would cover it, versus people who were coming in with access, which again is like Arizona's Medi-Cal. Those people, because they were so stingy, this insurance is so stingy about what they will cover, I could only do so much, and they ended up having to do repeat visits. And that really just made me angry, especially as, you know, my mom is on disability and on access and Medicare and stuff. And so that made me really mad. And I was very turned off, and I think I didn't want to do medicine at all for a while. But then I came around being like, well, you know, I think being mad about it and like having this happen, like you could be the change. I'm not saying I'm gonna like overhaul the whole health insurance you know, industry in America, but you could help work towards it. So that was my big thing, and that's still something that really makes me angry to this day. And yeah, so I don't know if anyone has a answer, but I can popcorn it off to Jay if you have anything.
Sure. The first thing that comes to mind is my scribing job. I had a job as a scribe for like, it was a year commitment, but I left a little bit early. And positives, I learned a lot about medical terminology. I got to form a really close relationship with a group of physicians. I got to kind of interact with patients and kind of like a behind the scenes way. Bad things, I realized that a lot of medicine is charting, and a lot of it increasingly in our world is sitting behind a computer. And so I was happy to fill a niche for my clinic and kind of alleviating that for some of our physicians so they could spend more time with patients. But it kind of made me think about like my life as a doctor and how like if maybe for those of you who don't have context, for people in the audience, like it is a lot of a physician's time is spent behind the computer making notes and like sending off prescriptions and things like that. And it's something that needs to be done. And I hope to like be part of like a change where we can figure out better ways to do some of those things so physicians do get to spend more time with their patients. But my scribing job was trying because I saw physicians struggle with balancing patient time and patient care with some of the like grunt work that they had to do. And I was like, do I really want to do this? So yeah, that's my story. I'm trying to think of like a positive spin. I learned a lot from the job, and and um, and yeah, and it is what it is. I hope that it changes. And I'll popcorn it off to Jerome.
Yeah, I think for me, fortunately, I haven't experienced like any situations where I was like seriously considering not doing medicine. I think I've always been firm on that. I did come close to thinking about trying to switch though, because I was friends with a lot of older students when I was a freshman in college, and also I took gap years, so I had an opportunity to not apply if I so chose. And I just saw a lot of my friends, going into different fields, just living their life. When I would be, even after school, I'd be at home and I'd be studying a case or, deep into the books and like still grinding like every day just to try to get to the prerequisite for a job, right? Like medical school isn't even the job yet. And we've already had to work so hard to get here. We have to work hard to get through it. All of that, and I think for me, that's the closest I've ever been to like not wanting to pursue medicine. Is like, did I want that lifestyle? Did I want to keep working all those years? And when I really asked myself that question, the answer was yes, I do want to pursue that. And again, it goes back to that introspection and knowing my values and knowing why I want to go into this field. And again, that's just another thing of like running your own race, right? And comparing yourself to others. Yeah, sure. Like they're having great lives now and that's great for them, but it's not like I'm having a bad life here. You know, it's delayed gratification in the grandest sort, but I know that it's going to be worth it in the end. And I think, Fatty, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, sure. Just to go off of what my classmates said, there's a lot of hidden, unfortunately, dark aspects of medicine. Like Rebecca said, there's a lot of inequality that still exists out there in the system based on your insurance and stuff like that. And UCLA, it's been known for a long time as being like the rich people's hospital. And then it's only recently that they're like trying to like work on it to accept like Medi-Cal, for example, and like to switch to not just helping the rich, but also everyone, right? There's, and like what Jay said, there are some aspects of medicine where you're going to be sitting down a lot with a computer, typing down, following regulations, looking up laws, doing like stuff that you probably didn't even think about were in medicine. There's stuff that you probably like will never like ever. And then there's going to be times where you're going to be standing on your feet for a long period of times. Like I'm hearing stories from like residents like working so many hours, overnight shifts. So there is like a lot of like dark aspects to medicine. So before you go into it, try to ask yourself a couple of questions. Can I go through 10 years of schooling and risk being burnt out, studying a lot, just so at the end of the day I can help a patient? If the answer is yes, then medicine is for you. But if you just want to pursue medicine because your mom and dad told you, oh, it comes with a great social status, you're gonna have a really nice life, you're gonna make a lot of money. If that's the reason why you go into medicine, then you should probably pull out and go pursue something else. So at the end of the day, are you willing to put in the work? Are you willing to go through like some like restless nights, sleepless nights, just so at the end you can help someone? And yeah, I encourage you to think really deep about that question, because we really need a lot of people who are going to make some change in this field. It's a movement out there. And at the end of the day, think of it as a marathon and not just a race. And you're in it for a long term, and there's a lot at stake. It's not just your life, it's someone else's that you're helping. So you make sure that you really like this like kind of job and responsibility, because lots of others people's lives are at stakes.
Cool. Well, thank you all for that. I think again, sort of a common thread is there are so many factors of medicine and other directions that one could go that sometimes the one and only inspiration for medicine sometimes can be tried. But what I'm hearing, at least, and what I also agree with is, at the end of the day, there are things about medicine that you would be hard pressed to find in any other occupation, and that's why at the end of the day we're all here. So again, I think a lot of the messages that have come through today have really revolved around introspection, being true to yourself, being authentic, pursuing the things that you love. And I think all of those elements are going to be very key for making a very strong application, a strong applicant, but more importantly than that, a happy and fulfilled person. So I would totally encourage you to sort of perform that introspection process and think about what it is you really want. And if at the end of the day it's not medicine or medical school, that's totally fine too. It's better to do that now and figure it out ahead of time. But again, there are also so many aspects of medicine that make it so worthwhile. So with that, I think we'll probably close our session this evening, but I'd like to thank all of our panelists, Fadi, Jay, Rebecca, Jerome. Thank you so much all for your time. And for anyone listening on the virtual recording, thank you all for listening and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Cool. All right.